Hi everyone, I'm Yosha. I'm the founder of Me Miraki, and very excited to host this conversation with all you amazing ladies. Thank you so much for making the time as part of the She the People Creator Fest. And this is a panel around sustainability, but my background's been more in artisanship and technology, so I thought it'll be great to try, and explore the realm of how technology and artisanship can actually be a catalyst towards sustainability. So I'd just love to start with, a little bit about each one of you, what your personal journey has been, about in sustainability, what actually, any anecdotes that you have around what actually caused the shift towards sustainability. I think it would be great to just start off a little bit with that to set the course of the conversation. Sanjana, if you want to start.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sanjana Rishi, and I am a content creator, and I mostly work with labels that are making, sustainable and ethical clothing. I also have my own loungewear line, which is on a bit of a hiatus right now because I'm now in the ninth month of my pregnancy, so extremely pregnant. But before this, I was a lawyer in the United States. And actually, in law school, I specialized in human rights law.
Okay.
And for me, human rights law, the more I learned about it, the more it became kind of clear that that was connected to climate justice and the interconnection of humanity and the planet is like very real. And I think a lot of the times what ends up happening is that when we think about the planet, we think about it as one thing, and when we think about people, we think about it as another thing, right? So nowadays in sustainability, for example, especially in a place like America, people focus on the environment, but I think it's, for me, it was always equally important to focus on things like in India that are super important, like labor rights movements and craft and artisan revival. Because if we can't really talk about the planet if we don't talk about the people,
Yeah.
and I feel like sustainability should be about also sustaining, livelihood for the people that exist in our community. So it kind
Mhm.
of all came together for me. Really through the pandemic, realizing the damage that we've caused our ecosystem, including the people and sort of the environment around us. So that's how I started thinking more deeply about sustainability. And as someone that has always, held fashion close to my heart, I realized just how unethical some of the companies, even, the big luxury brands, can be in their creation process. And yeah, that really brought me to doing more research about, trying to veer away from that. And it's actually quite easy now. There are so many fantastic labels and brands, especially in a place like India, that, promote different aspects of sustainability. And I just love that. And I love discovering that and sharing that with people. So that's really what I do. So thank you for having me here, Yosha. I'm always happy to be a
Beautiful.
part of these kinds of conversations, and of course work with amazing people like you, me, Meraki, and of course like Kirti, who is amazing and just the right person for this conversation.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And that was beautiful. I love that focus on, you can't talk about the planet without focus on the people, right? I think that's a beautiful segue into actually what we are trying to do at Nimiraki also, because for us it's all about, I mean, artisanship in India, that artisanal economy is actually almost 200 million plus people, right? I mean, and if they've definitely been left behind in the whole digital revolution, and if we can't focus on reducing income inequalities, creating more employment opportunities there, we are definitely, yeah, sustainability goes out of the window, right? So that's a great segue into talking about, you telling us more as well. As Sanjana just mentioned your name, so would love to know more from you and what does, sustainability mean to you personally, and yeah, any anecdotes around what got you started.
So I think about 6 years ago, I traveled to Iceland and I went on a trek to a glacier. And my guide at the time, she showed me where the mountain was going to start. And when we reached there, she said that we had to actually park our car a kilometer away just 6 years ago, which means that is how fast it was melting. And honestly, I'd heard about all this before, but standing there in that moment, seeing that glacier melt so fast, I think that really moved me. I came back home to my hotel and I started to Google that glacier and I started to find more and I started to find stop motion videos of how it was melting super fast. I think that really was a moment for me. Of course, after that, when Okai happened, and for the last 6 years, I've been working in artisan sustainability. People and planet have both been very, very important to me. And now with Relove, where I'm starting a fashion tech company,
Mhm.
which enables brands to allow their customers to resell their products on their own website,
Yeah,
which a very,
exciting.
very powerful tech platform for customers to be able to do that and brands to be able to do that. They're in a very powerful position, and they can ensure circularity. So I think that's about me and what I feel for sustainability. So happy to be here on this panel. Just woke up. Uh,
No, thank you for being here. I mean, for everyone watching, Kirti is in South Africa, and yeah, thankfully she's being able to make her way back to India. But yeah, she's made the
yeah,
time to really be with us today. Thank you for
I'm
that.
just in a few minutes after this, and I hope I can get the flight.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I really hope so too. But that does sound like a really visceral sort of, experience actually, right? Being there and seeing that happen. And thank you for sharing that. Urja, would love to know more from you.
Hello. So, very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And for me, when someone asks me what sustainability means to me, I have a very simple definition for it, which I have stuck to since the year that I started caring about sustainable fashion. I think that was 2014. I think that sustainable fashion is basically integrating fashion with being a good person. You know, when you go onto the path of thinking about things like compassion, kindness, and I love what Sanjana mentioned about the interconnectedness of beings on our planet. It's not that it's us and it's the environment. We're all interconnected and we all impact each other. So I just felt like if you have the kind of consciousness to want to do better for the world, it comes naturally to lean into sustainable fashion or sustainable design or any area that you work in your career. I am a fashion designer, so sustainable fashion was the first and obvious step for me. Same way, I really admire people who are into sustainable architecture and craft and all of that stuff. So I do think that sustainable fashion is basically all about compassion and thinking about our choices. And after this pandemic, I think all of us as a global collective consciousness, we have become more sensitized towards how important it is to care about the earth. You know, I remember there was a time when environmentalists or people who care about the environment were a small bunch in the corner. And for everyone else, they had an option that, oh, do I want to get into being eco conscious or not? But now it is not an option anymore. You know, everybody has to be eco conscious to some level.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was in design school, we watched The True Cost as a class activity, and that was a turning point for me. I had this reckoning that whatever money I'm spending, I am casting a vote for the kind of world I want. I think Emma Watson said that. I don't remember who exactly. But yeah, and I thought that this is what is behind every fast fashion brand, that people like me, when we were 19 and 20 and 21, that was the only place we went to shop. And I thought that I am literally supporting abuse and modern slavery by shopping from certain brands. So that, and
Wow.
also the fact that we visited a lot of craft clusters in India when I was studying.
Mhm.
I studied to be a fashion designer. I was in Pearl Academy. So I remember going to Ajrakpur and Rajasthan and Lucknow for chicken curry and actually sitting with and meeting all these artisans. And I thought that time that if every person in India could at least once in their lifestyle sit with a karigar where they create and see what is happening,
Yeah,
then it would be such a huge shift, right? It would totally change the way we consume handmade after that. So
beautiful.
yeah, I guess my design college journey was what got me into sustainability, and that's why I'm still around here.
That's lovely, and that's a line after my own heart. If everyone, could sit with the Karigar once, yeah, that would definitely change things. That's beautiful. Devika, let's talk about mindful weddings and what got you started with mindful weddings.
So I think my journey is slightly different because I'm very far removed from the world of fashion. And I
Yeah,
work in an industry where people talk about grandness and
that,
showmanship
yeah,
versus being conscious or sustainable. And for me, it's about changing the vocabulary around weddings, about making sure that where where we're thinking consciously or where things are coming from, where they're going to go at the very end of the day, and sort of bringing up on what Oorja and Sanjana said. To me, uh, good design is sustainable. It's not the other way around. It is a byproduct. Is if it's beautiful, if it's good design, it has to be sustainable. My journey, amusingly, is very different because sustainability found me.
okay.
I didn't look out. I didn't step out to create a more conscious world. Oorja, I grew up in Lucknow. So
Huh?
for me, having a karigar at home was just a part of daily life. I don't think I had the respect for it when I was growing up because it was very normal. My mom works in textiles and handicrafts. They've traveled and lived all over the country. So it was very normal for us to have a sari from every single state. It was very normal for us to go to a center and have our own clothes chapai done and embroidery done. When I started designing weddings, I think I was trying to be different when I started working with craft clusters and local bodies. And I was uh, never thinking from a sustainability perspective. And today, I'm very invested in working with local craftsmen. We do something called the 100-kilometer wedding, where everything is sourced from within 100 kilometers of a venue, versus this whole earlier idea of importing flowers, shipping things cross country. So my understanding of sustainability has changed drastically. We did something last year which we thought was the first sustainable wedding in India, and then I spent the last 2 years studying about it and realized that I didn't account for the energy consumption or the water used. And I live every day in an industry where greenwashing is real, where to have a sustainable wedding is to gift potted plants and not think about plastic or single
Yeah,
use. Um, so I fight daily small battles
yeah.
in an attempt to sort of change the larger landscape of an industry with like small steps that we've actually grown up with, of just working with carigars, of reusing, of choosing a glass bottle over plastic,
Mhm.
or wrapping in kapda, which is just old things that our mums and grandmoms have always done, or saving something. So that's sort of been my very fast forward journey in sustainability and how it found me in reverse and made me cool versus me going out to find it.
I love that. And I would say actually, yeah, my journey is sort of similar, that it found me. I loved artisanship, and it sort of just found me, and yeah, it all came together. So I think, a lot of you have covered artisanship in each one. All of you have talked about that a little bit. I think it'll be really nice to explore that further, right? I mean, the fashion industry is definitely one of the biggest contributors to the whole climate crisis, right? And like you mentioned, Devika, weddings, home decor has been, one of the large parts of that as well. And like you rightly said, it's all about like the grander it is, the better it is in people's minds. So do you actually think that artisanship can be one of the answers, right? That the more we focus on artisanship, the more we focus on handmade, and handmade by its very nature is more sustainable. I mean, there's a lot of research which says that of the 17 SDG goals, handmade actually sort of ticks off each one of those, right? So but would love to hear, a little more from each one of you as to why do you think that is, if you actually do believe that, artisanship and artisan made can actually be one of the answers. Kirti, I think you would be, the to start this would be great.
I think the number one thing, and that links people and planet together, is that it has very low energy consumption. So when you spin by hand, you're not using a machine. When you embroider by hand, you're not using electricity. And most electricity is unsustainable in our country. Um, so that is the number one thing, that because it's handmade, it's not going to consume energy. The second thing, of course, is employment. It's a clear winner, and it's employment for women. And when women bring money home, they really buy a stake in the decision making process of their household, which means that they get to decide if the boy and the girl will both go to tuitions in the evening, or will only the son go, what they will buy for their house, how they will spend that money. She decides. And so that definitely is a big part of handmade in our country. and the way that changes our country every single day is very evident.
Yeah.
I think the third thing is, of course, in India we have only 10 cities which are providing employment to most people. But
Mhm.
when you work in the handmade and craft industry, you work in rural areas, and those areas start becoming economically stronger,
Yeah.
which means that there will be almost something like reverse migration, because everybody is going to otherwise move to these 10 cities and try to make money, live in a 4x4, and never really make enough to take back home. So I think it really sort of allows us to develop something known as a distributed manufacturing system in the
Mhm.
deepest of our country, which can then make all of those parts a lot more stronger.
Yeah. That's
Finally,
beautiful. Yeah.
people say that luxury is all of that silk stuff that you buy in London. That's
Yeah.
not luxury. Is what we are making, which is hand spun, hand woven, hand embroidered. That is true luxury, and India has those luxury brands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Hermes is sort of, counted as the ultimate luxury brand, right? But ultimately, yeah, the whole tenet of that was, made by hand, right? But
Yeah.
thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, Oorja, would you're a big proponent of artisan made as well. Would love to hear from you about that too.
Absolutely. So I completely resonate with what Kirti just said about how what we are doing here, our embroideries, are true luxury. And, one thing that I've always thought about in terms of Indian artisans and Indian crafts, and how people who deeply study these crafts, for example, myself, since this was part of what I had to study, it's when you spend time to research into this, or when you go and visit a karigar, you can see that the slow process, and caring about every detail at every step of production. Not and when artisans are making products, it's not always about what is the quickest way to make thousands of these. That is
Yeah.
not the attitude they're going in there with. It's
Yeah.
all about how each product that they make, they are putting in their very best to ensure that each one unit is an object of art. And that is really beautiful. That is what luxury is about. And it's it's crazy that as luxurious as it is, the average consumer is not seeing it as desirable or as luxurious as they are seeing a Western luxury brand product to be.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing which I don't know if everybody would think this way, but as a big customer of artisanal fashion and artisanal home decor and all that, I feel that now, this point in time where we are today, I am done with the narrative of artisanal brands, even my own brand,
Mm-hmm.
making artisanal purchases a sympathy buy. I remember there was a time when it was always, oh, the poor artisans, please
Yeah.
help them. There's this kind of condescension that comes into the marketing narrative of certain brands,
Yeah.
wherein they are at a higher position and the artisan is at a lower position.
Yeah.
And I feel that I might sound like a very cunning marketing person when I say this, but I feel like if you are making a customer buy something from a place of sympathy, that person will buy one time, and the next
Right.
time, I've actually seen my family and my friends do this. The next time you go to the mall and you tell them that, hey, why don't you consider buying a handloom, they'll say something like, I go to this fair once a year and buy a sari, so I've done my bit, so now I can just buy whatever I want. So
Yeah.
when you get sales from a position of sympathy for artisans, you are making people feel like they have done some obligatory charity. But when you make that artisanal product desirable, when
Yeah.
people understand that this is luxurious, this is something to be in awe of, then
Yeah.
people keep going back to buy that handcrafted item. They want to be associated with the story. So,
Absolutely.
that's why I
Yeah.
love how Me Meraki does these workshops,
Thank you.
because people can actually be there virtually with the artisan, and they are trying to do what the artisan is doing, and they are failing at it, and they realize that this is difficult, and this takes a
Yeah.
lot of skill and a lot of talent. So
Thank
I
you.
think it's time we rebrand the narrative around artisanal products, that
Yeah.
um, you're not doing someone a favor by buying artisanal goods. It's actually something to be proud of and something to, lust after as a customer. So
That,
I would
that's
like to see that happen more.
Thank you for the shout out. And absolutely, I think we absolutely try and avoid the word help in any of our narrative. I think that that word itself, like you rightly said, it speaks from a position of that, oh, we are higher up in the hierarchy and we are being able to help, right? So we absolutely refrain from using that, and it's all about elevating the crafts, right? But and maybe there needs to be a word like, there's greenwashing. There actually needs to be a word for this as well, like people wrongly using crafts as well. But coming from there, it's moving on to greenwashing, right? I mean, and Devika, you spoke about that a little bit as well, and I know Sanjana, you talk about that a bit as well, right? I think it'll be good to sort of talk a bit more about that, especially you as digital creators. you know how, how do you best kind of make sure that the brand who you're in, whose product you're talking about and endorsing, how do you kind of make sure that they are following, they're actually following the right practices, and you in turn are not greenwashing either, right? I mean, any thoughts on that, Sanjana? Maybe if you want to start.
Um, I think it is difficult. I think I'm in a real position of privilege because I can ask brands difficult questions. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I try to do is before I buy something, or especially before I promote something, I try to have a very detailed, I mean, I did this with you, Yosha. I do it with, I've done it with
Yeah.
other brands. I've done it with Okai, where I speak. Yeah, I try my best to really do my research. And I think that's one thing that I would encourage everyone to do a
Mhm.
lot more of, which is at least know where your clothes are coming from.
Yeah.
And in this day and age now, in the world and realm of Instagram, I think it is a bit easier to reach out to brands and try and ask them questions, and especially the smaller brands. So I think, like, yes, that's difficult to do if you're talking about one of the big fast fashion brands or even one of the bigger brands in India. But the smaller brands, which I consider to be usually the more sort of ethical
Ethical.
brands,
Yeah.
they will reply to you. I mean, I ran a brand. A lot of us here have run brand. Like, what is your average response time on an Instagram, right? It's like
Yeah.
probably hours,
Yeah.
because we can't afford not to respond. So you hear
Yeah.
everything and you try to make an informed decision based on that. But yeah, greenwashing is rampant, and that's the other thing, is like we call it greenwashing, but there's a lot more to it than just the green part of it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so your fabric is made from whatever innovative cellulose
Mhm.
based technology, but at the same time you are not paying a fair wage to your cargars, to your artisans, to the people that are making, to your tailors, anybody. That's a problem, right? So it's not just about having some laundry list of questions. It's also about questioning the questions and thinking, okay, like, it's not just about like your material, it's about the people, what you do to uplift this community. And so if you can get those, and I mean, those answers are actually more difficult to get from people. So to
Yeah.
the extent that people are at least trying their best to answer that question or provide sustainable wages to people, that's
Mhm.
really important to me. So I think I would say, do your research, ask your questions. You have the power of Google, you have the power of Instagram,
Yeah.
and really just use that as much as you can to your benefit. And for me, if somebody lies to me, that's always, for me, is like, what am I supposed to do in that situation? And I will not backtrack, but I will
Yeah.
correct myself. And don't be afraid to admit that you did something wrong. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't do, is, as humans, we are inherently defensive. So if someone says we've wronged them in some way, we try to justify it, as opposed to think, you know what, you're right, like, maybe there is something to this and I had no idea, and I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the best way to try and combat greenwashing is just be aware of it and be aware of what it really is, which is fraudulent practices or unethical practices.
And like you said, I mean, very importantly, be ready for course correction when required as
Yeah,
well, right?
for
So
sure.
yeah,
I
I
think
think
I actually think that's the most important thing for me, because it's like we all make mistakes. We don't know, right? We live in a world where people will blatantly lie to you.
yeah.
And you just have to be able to, and you have to just be able to stand your ground. And for a lot of for a lot of content creators, it's like, it's easy to say, yes, I support the handloom movement, but then the next week promote something that's like very
Yeah.
kind of against the antithesis of handloom, really. So
Yeah.
it's also like finding consistent messaging and just trying to realize what that space is, what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then correcting course when you feel like you've done something wrong, as opposed to doubling down on this is why I think what I did was ethical. Just say, okay,
Yeah.
if someone's calling me out on it, like, I mean, I'll use an example, like the collaboration that just happened with H&M.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I was surprised because none of the people who posted about the Sabya and H&M collection, sorry, I don't want to name drop, and I hope you can edit this out.
I thought that this would come up. I would have brought it up if it didn't.
Okay, so the collaboration between the, you know, the big name, the big fast fashion brand and the big, you know, Indian luxury name was so important. But when the crafts community, okay, calls you out and says, here is why this is unfair, unethical in the eyes of us, the community, as represented by these stakeholders, I didn't see one person say, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Perhaps I was wrong in doing this, right? Which, okay, you made the mistake, but you could have course corrected, and you didn't do that at all. You just doubled down by saying, you know, they had the one line, which was, this celebrates Indian textile.
Yeah.
So,
True.
so like things like that, like I would have had a lot of respect for any content creator that would have said, oh, you know what? I didn't think about it that way. I didn't think about, you know, this Sanganeri print taking away from the actual block printers of that area. So, you know, that kind of thing is like, you have to be able to course correct in order for us to like really repair where the state of the fashion industry right now.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And super important. I guess, I mean, you know, coming to then what, like, you've all been creating content and convincing people to make these difficult choices, make sustainable choices, it's hard, right? But is there something like you've done as part of your content creation or as part of your business practices, like, you know, all of you run businesses as well, that you're particularly proud of, that you felt that this really made a difference, this really made people stop, take notice, and maybe it'll sort of start a conversation and start some change? I think would be really good to sort of know a little bit more about that, because I think that's what can maybe inspire others to think of, you know, creating content like that as well. So Oorja, maybe if you want to start with that.
Sure. So I think here for this, I want to bring up a tone of content that I put out occasionally every once in a few weeks. And especially if somebody starts an illogical fight with me in my DM about sustainability, that really motivates me to post stuff like this. So right from the time that I started revive.style as a sustainable fashion blog, I have always kept talking about how a lot of times in the sustainable fashion community, there is this need to be perfect, and there is this sentiment that my idea of sustainability and my brand of sustainability is the correct way, and there is no other way. And people forget the privileges that they enjoy, which enable them to make the choices they make, and others don't enjoy the same privilege. So I do a lot of posts about how a sustainable life looks different for each one of us. And our definition of sustainable choices is going to be different based on the money we have, where we live, and our career, our occupation, our unique privileges, our place in society, our country, everything. So I put out a lot of content about how people should know that whenever you see these kind of discussions happening on Instagram about which collaboration, such as the Sabya and H&M, the good and bad of it, all of that, uh, it is so important, like Sanjana said, to course correct, to think about yourself. And it is also so important to know that certain people are going to make certain sustainable choices which are not feasible for you to make. Maybe you can't make the same choices, but you can do something else really well. So you go and do that. A few days ago, somebody DM'd me, and it was a very angry DM, which said that, I am always shouting about sustainable fashion on my blog, but what about the people who cannot afford to buy a handloom top or a slow fashion designer? So my response to that, not only to that person, but also to in a lot of posts that I have put out all the time, is that we have to make unique choices about how sustainability looks like for us in our lives. So, I think nowadays, because of so many handmade brands popping up, there is this misconception that being sustainable means that you go and buy these things instead of going and buying those things. But it's not about what you buy, it's about your intention and how you're making small decisions in your everyday life. So choosing to have a sustainable wedding with someone like Devika, or choosing to buy artisanal because you can afford to, or choosing to thrift, choosing to go secondhand. There are choosing to carry bags to the grocery shop instead of getting new plastic. There's so much in the spectrum. So I think the content that I'm most proud of, because of the amount of engagement and discussion it sparks, is what does sustainability look like for you, and you do your best the way that it works for you. Don't think about how someone else is doing it and I must try to fit into that too.
Makes
So
sense.
it's like a lifelong learning to be
Yeah.
sustainable.
Absolutely. And since you just mentioned mindful weddings, then Devika, would be great to hear from you, like, something that you feel really helped change the conversation and change the narrative.
For me, everything that's handmade is art. And I'm very interested in the process of it. I'm very interested in the imperfections of it, because each piece that is made by hand is unique on its own. And I think one of the things that has given me a lot of joy, and that you see through everything that I design today, or the spaces I create for myself or for other people, is the idea of being able to elevate the craft into an art form, and
Yeah.
not just seeing that this is available in a mela, so that is kitsch, but making sure that it's able to find a place in your luxury wedding in a 7-star hotel, or in your house, which may be on the fanciest address in all of Mumbai, anywhere
Yeah.
else in the world. So I think that to me has been the most fulfilling part of being able to introduce the process of how something is made, because everything which is handmade, artisanal, the sheer amount of hands it passes through, each of
Yeah.
them have their own little story to tell. They have a language of their own. When you touch them, you can see the journey they've been through, right?
Yeah.
And I find this extremely unique, that one person could have been making, let's say, a potter could have been making glasses all his life, the same design. But if you were to tell him to make 100 pieces, all of those 100, each one of those pieces would be unique. And to
Yeah.
me, that is so interesting, because that is what art is. It is unique. And for me, the idea of sharing with the world how these things are made, and be that they can find a space in your luxury, in this luxury sort of space in your homes or in your weddings. I think that has been one of the most interesting things, to be able to elevate what is available down your road, and to pick that what is available down your road over something available in Florence.
Yeah.
And just by changing the vocabulary and the way you use those things, whether it is, I mean, I love using the genda. And every time, I remember 5 years back, if you walked into a wedding space and said, we'll use genda, they'd be like, hey, genda, why do you want to use genda? Let's get orchids down from somewhere. To a vocabulary where today a bride will walk up to me and say, listen, I don't like the flower, but I love how you use it. Let's use something that's local.
Yeah.
Or this very small thing of, I started going to flower markets.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever city I'm in, I love going to the flower market. And today, when people reach out to me for Diwali, for Holi on a random day saying, oh my God, it's winter, we went to the flower market and bought something that's local, and we didn't even know these flowers existed or individual growers existed.
Yeah.
To me, I honestly get a bit of a thrill with all of those things. It's not about a contribution to the world, but it's about opening up people's world.
Right.
I remember years ago when we were shooting with Condé Nast, we took them to a block print facility, and you had to see the look of the faces of the people who worked for a fashion magazine, because they said, we thought block print was only bed covers. We didn't know it involved so much work.
Wow.
And to me, just to open up the minds of even a few people is great, because when you start viewing an artist with a certain amount of awe and have respect for what they do, that's a win, because you appreciate what they make, whether it's perfect, imperfect, what price tag it comes with.
Yeah.
And especially as Indians, we have this sort of understanding that if you pick up something from a mela versus whether you pick up something from a fancy store with white walls,
Yeah.
even though the same product, the price tag or the
Yeah.
environment defines it. To
Yeah.
me, I want to change that. To me, everything that you make, whether you make it in your garage, you make it in a gaon somewhere, you make it with your family, you make it as part of a big brand. Each one of those pieces are unique. Each one is art. Just because it's a X collaboration of X into X doesn't make it cool.
Yeah.
Go to Nagaland and get those damn vases. Don't buy them online.
Exactly.
So these are like, and coming from what Sanjana said, I think this whole sort of relationship, at least my relationship with sustainability or what is sustainable, has been one of conscious learning and unlearning. Every time I've thought that I've done something cool, there's a sobering fact of all the things I didn't think of, right? And
Mhm.
how to fix that. And I don't think it is possible to live 100% sustainable life. It is not possible, and I think that's one of the strongest reckonings I've had.
Yeah.
I still use plastic at home because it makes
Mhm.
sense for me to use plastic at home. I still pick fights with hotels who use plastic bottles, and to me, it makes sense to me,
Yeah.
right? They're two sentences, but it's about the use of things. It's about what Oorja said, or what makes sense to you, and what fights you choose to pick.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's been for me my relationship with sustainability, and that relationship is up for the world to see, because you'll see me dabbling with things, you'll see me saying this is horrible, but maybe we should relook at it
Yeah.
in a different way. And I love that the world is able to travel with me and explore this relationship of mine, and be witness to it
I
on
love
on the
that.
various forms of social media we use.
I'd love to. I mean, because you pointed out about elevating the craft, right? I think I'd love to add an anecdote there about, like, we made a beautiful video about Rogan art, and our artist, showing Rogan art in this video, and that one actually went viral. That has like over 2.5 million views on Instagram and Facebook. But the nice thing, the most beautiful part, like, my team and I were going through the comments, and in the comments, people have written things like, henceforth I'll never bargain, because now I see what effort it takes and how beautiful this is, and it's magic, literally, right? Like watching a craftsman sort of transform a color into like almost an embroidery like sort of pattern, right? And I think that was like really gratifying, that wow, I mean, the content that you create, and if you change the story, you change the narrative, and like you said, Devika, change the context a bit, the whole sort of it elevates that craft completely. Kirti and Sanjana, anything you want to add before we move on to discussing a bit about tech?
Do you want to go
Any-
first?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I defer.
Okay. So, the one post that did really well, and I think it was on Restore. It was a comparison of refill bags versus bottles.
Mhm.
People think that when we buy refill packs for our hand wash, it's a lot more sustainable because you're not buying a whole bottle. But actually, that is grade 7 plastic, which actually does not get recycled. But a bottle actually can possibly get recycled.
Yeah.
That post really, really was shocking for people. It was new information, it got shared like crazy. So I've realized that when you really deeply research something and you break a myth, and very clearly, transparently tell people that X is better than Y in this situation, I think it really works. So I think that would be the
Mhm.
best example. Other than that, I think on social media, we're all being very transparent that we also don't know completely on what's
Yeah.
better, what is the best way to live. We're all flying across the world. We're all
Yeah.
from a box somewhere. But I think the fact that you're trying and the fact that you put it out there that you're trying will motivate a few people to try.
Hmm. True. That's very true.
Oh,
Sanjana.
I think when you talk about picking, knowing your battles and stuff, I pick a lot of battles.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
I mean, it's true, but I am pretty proud to, even if like I have noticed that sometimes I get associated sort of automatically with controversy. And as someone that works essentially in marketing, that tends to sometimes jeopardize my relationships with brands or with PR companies, because they might think like, oh, you know, she might fly off the handle, and who knows what she's going to say. But I think it's just important to have that voice. And even if you feel that somebody is an extreme voice in some cases, I think that's really important to advance the conversation. So if we're starting here in a conversation and, you know, someone is here, like if I'm here somewhere in the conversation, then maybe someone will meet me from here to here. And like even just going that distance is like really so important. And so, I mean, there was a lot of, I don't know, I can't even keep track of all the stuff that I've said, but you know, just talking about things, I think, like, for example, I don't think people associate fast fashion with colonialism enough. And that's something that's really important to me, is as we talk about, you know, being proud of being made in India, and we talk about working against colonialism, we tend to forget things like, really one of the founding principles of why India was colonized was to kind of take textiles from India and be able to
manufacture them in Britain. Yeah,
exactly, and take them there and then flood the Indian market with mass-produced products, and therefore inherently take business away from small handcrafted, you know, handicraft communities, which is how we were making and how we were processing textiles for whatever centuries before that,
and dominating world exports literally with that. Yeah,
exactly. So it's just things like that where I'm like happy to have these kinds of conversations. So it's just, I mean, I just love the idea that I can be part of a conversation where it's advancing some form of this conversation. You know, you can come at it from so many, like we have discussed, we can come at it from so many different perspectives. And for me, like, I love being able to actually engage with people in like the intellectual part of it, right? Which is like, oh, you want to talk about what it means to be Indian, but you want to criticize this, you know, like whatever. I hate naming names in these kinds of things, but you know, you want to criticize Fab India for something, but the fact is that Fab India, from its very foundation, has been providing sustainable employment to craft clusters across the country, and nothing could be more proudly Indian than that to me.
So absolutely, yeah.
So I think just being able to take stock of where we are now, and being able to question the things that we take for granted, like even just the assumption. And Devika, I mean, I know you said that you don't work so much in fashion, but like weddings and fashion, like you cannot separate the two, right? Like those two things are like so inherently tied to one another. And you know, when I wore my pantsuit for my wedding, it was secondhand and all this, and it became like this fully viral moment. But I also got a lot of hate for being anti-Indian. But in a lot of ways, like we've just gotten caught up in this world of weddings, where weddings are this, have to be this OTT thing where everybody, you know, like has to wear this. It was a COVID wedding for me, so I had exactly 12 people at my wedding. I would have felt awkward if I was in a huge lehenga. And the fact is that there isn't anything more Indian than reusing an outfit a million times, because that's jugaad, right? Like you make do with what you have. That is a part of India. You use a t-shirt and it becomes a t-shirt, then it goes into the kitchen, it becomes the kitchen rag, then it becomes, you know, you use it for whatever else, you use it for oil, then it becomes the car rag. So it's like, you know, it's not all, like we said, sustainability is not all about buying the new cool thing. It's also about reusing mindfully, or just using things mindfully. And that's what I felt I was doing with my wedding. But I think people have this idea of what India or Indian culture means, that has kind of deviated from what I feel are like the practices that are inherent to our culture, and that actually make our culture, and have made our culture for hundreds of years, you know, more sustainable than the West.
Yeah, no, very true. And I'm so proud of you, honestly, for picking all these battles. And thank you for doing that. Really, I mean, really, I'm really glad that you do that. It's tough, I'm sure. I mean, constantly, you know, getting so much flack, but I'm really glad that you know, keep at it. So thank you for that. Kirti had to
add something to what Sanjana said. I love what you mentioned about how it's in the practice and not in the look, because there is a lot of tokenism that happens in the sustainable online space. If you look sustainable, you are sustainable and nobody questions you. But if I am wearing a fast fashion dress on my feed that I have since 5 years, then I get hated on for that. So there's a lot of hypocrisy. And even with Fab India, like, it's wonderful that we can call out brands to do better, but there is a difference between calling out and canceling. And I think the latter is toxic. So
For sure.
everyone, all brands, even Fab India, they're doing a lot of good and they're just doing their best, and we
But
should honor that. Yeah.
I have realized that, like, when people say cancel culture, it's just an easy way for someone now who's being
Yes.
called out to say, like, oh, I'm being canceled, like, this is our cancel culture. But the thing is,
Yeah.
no, nobody like, you
Nobody can cancel you. Yeah, you
Yeah.
you decide when you're here.
you
Exactly.
can bring your opinion to the table. You can take accountability for what you've done or what you believe you've done, and we can discuss it.
Exactly. And like you said earlier, it's course correction, right? When required. I mean, do course correction when required. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have been pretty close to like wrapping up, but we have to talk a little bit about technology because that's what I wanted. I wanted to talk about. We've talked a lot about artisanship, thankfully, but yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about tech as well. Unfortunately, Kirti had to leave because she had to get a COVID test now to take her flight. But she actually would have been great to mention a little bit about that as well. Like if you've seen great examples of how tech is being used to promote sustainability more, whether in our personal lives as consumers or as businesses. And just a shout out to what Kirti is doing with Relove right now. They've created a whole tech platform where they're going to brands, to fashion brands, which can incorporate their tech platform Relove and actually enable consumers to resell their fashion garments bought from that particular fashion brand. So I think that's awesome. And I think the first brand they're doing it with is Summer House, which is great. So yeah, shout out to one tech solution. But any quick examples, please, if any of you know of, and you've been really which you found really exciting, which could really help us either in our personal lives or for businesses as well. And Devika, maybe if you want to start with that.
My perspective is slightly different. Till about 2019, we were able to travel to artisans and craftsmen and speak to them and see their products and talk to them in their local language. But the last 2 years sort of changed that around. And to me, it's incredible how artists and craftsmen in remote villages today can use WhatsApp, can send you a photo. They can't type, but they can send you a voice note. And to me, it's incredible because I'm sitting in Bombay and I'm speaking to somebody in Kolhapur or Pokhran, and they're able to send me things, and I'm able to have a conversation with them. And while we're talking about larger sort of websites coming in, there's no denying that just our cell phone has been the most valuable technology to put in the hands of a craftsman who can take a photo to put it online to sell today. And the fact that we have platforms which are allowing artisans to do it. I buy saris from one chap in Chanderi. He sends me photos every day, but he's able to use his phone. He's able to sell on WhatsApp and Facebook. And to me, there has to be some credit given to how this kind of tech has also completely changed the way people are shopping, the way people are seeing their own art. And I love that for so many second generation craftsmen, their kids, all that they're doing is promoting the work that parents have done. So from an earlier industry where children didn't want to be a part of the family business because they looked down upon it, and suddenly they're stepping in and saying, we'll help you, we'll change the way you look at your own product. And I think that has been the most, that's the coolest thing that's happened to the craft movement in India, at least that people are able to sort of showcase what they do on a larger framework.
I love
But I
that.
think
And that's exactly been our experience as well at Mimiraki, actually. We have WhatsApp, honestly, like, when we talk of tech, probably, a lot of people don't end up mentioning it, but I'm so glad you did because it's literally the lowest common denominator. We have hundreds of groups with our artists and artisans on WhatsApp. And like you said, exactly the same experience that the children are almost the next generation tech entrepreneurs, the artisan entrepreneurs for the artisan. And I absolutely love that. But yeah, Sanjana, if you have any examples that you want to share as well for tech.
Oh, sorry. I think that there are so many like labels, I guess I would say these days, that actually incorporate bringing together craft clusters. Sorry. So for example, like Okai for me is one of those things where, because I've worked with them, I also know a lot about their internal processes, and they are able to uplift. I mean, when you read their individual stories or you hear from their individual craftspeople, they were able to turn women in certain rural centers of India into the breadwinners in their family when their husbands, for example, were being laid off as a result of the pandemic. And I think that is one of the most beautiful ways, because essentially what they do is they aggregate these, products and these craftspeople, and they're able to use their online platform, obviously, to sell these onward. And that really connects. And something like Okai, which is, like a partnership with Tata, is like so big to have, because they have an international reach, which essentially means that, one crafts person or one woman working in handloom in India can connect with this incredibly vast market that's available to few people really worldwide. And that not only, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but having women take that position in the family not only uplifts the women, it uplifts the entire community, because the whole village, the whole area sees that this woman is able to provide for her family. It changes the status of women. So I think things like that, movements like that, where really, even if it is partly a CSR initiative, right, from a big corporate, there are ways to do that enable technology to really serve at the behest of craftspeople. So I think that's a really great example.
Thank you. Oorja.
Okay. So something that I want to first talk about something that I personally experienced in terms of tech and artisans coming together. And that was when I joined a workshop with Yosha's Me Meraki, because I just love how it is so collaborative, and I'm really passionate about the craft that I tried to learn in that workshop. And I could actually experience the artisan sharing anecdotes about his daily life and his tools and how he mixes paints. So I love that people in this lockdown got to experience that, being with the remotest artisans from around the country and learning directly from them. And same as Devika, WhatsApp has been so amazing for me in terms of being able to source from artisans for my brand, because now, as of today, you can do payments on WhatsApp. You link your bank account to WhatsApp, and it's so easy to send money forward and backwards. WhatsApp Business has a catalog in which these artisans are creating little storefronts entirely on WhatsApp, and their kids are their social media managers. And it's so amazing to witness that artisans are using Instagram and they're using WhatsApp. And I used to earlier travel to craft clusters to source things, which was, of course, really fun. But because of WhatsApp, I can source things at a larger scale because everybody can access me digitally. So these two everyday things, Zoom and WhatsApp, have made such a huge difference in terms of me being able to connect with artisans. So this I love, I'm very excited about. And there's just this one tiny thing which is still up in the air. I don't know what's happening with that, but I recently found out that there are scientists in biotechnology who are working on sequencing a mushroom that can break down plastic. So I'm really excited to see what happens with that and where that goes, because if that mushroom can go large scale, it will have a very abundant food supply on this planet. And plastic is what keeps me up at night when it comes to sustainability. So I want to see what's going to happen with that in terms of tech to fight plastic. Nature and tech coming together to fight plastic. So I'm quite excited about that.
Oorja, I'm into those machines that clean up rivers and lakes.
Oh wow!
That's what I want to see changing the world. I want to see them in the Nala in front of my house. I want to see them out in the sea. I want to see large scale, all of those things we read about in this magical universe of sustainability, in like an ideal world. I want to see those buggers. I don't want to see drones in the air. I want to see them clearing nalas and rivers and like full scale doing this. And I also want to segregate waste.
I was literally going to say that. Okay, let's just end with one line about what do you want to see in your sustainable world, and you just literally pointed that out. Sanjana, if you want to add that one last line about what you want to see in your ideal sustainable world.
I just want to see more people take a positive step towards committing to change. I think a lot of people, yes, there's a lot of this sentiment of, sustainability can be kind of expensive to the point where, or, inaccessible. And that is true for some people, but I know it's not true for everybody. And I just wish that people would really learn to accept it. And when we talk about, a tech thing that's happened that's really assisted sustainability, I think it's just the sheer amount of information that's now available to us on Instagram, via the internet, where we really can educate and inform ourselves. So I think that one thing I would really like for people to do, or that I would really like to see in a more sustainable world, is for people to continue to educate themselves and question the things that they have taken for granted for generations, really.
Awesome. Yeah. I want an app which tells me literally like every product I'm using, everything I'm doing. It should just tell me like right, wrong, like have a red alert for something.
Yeah, that's going to give you so much anxiety. You're not going to know what to do with yourself.
But yeah, I think that would be cool. That's true, actually. That would be a hard one to manage. But thank you so much, ladies. This has been such a fun conversation. We were supposed to do 40 minutes and we still can't stop talking. But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It was super fun. And thank you to the people.